I'm Eric. I'm the pastor here at the church. Just like to welcome you if you're a guest here. We're glad that you're here today. Yeah, it's going great. Thanks. I appreciate you asking. So, anybody come from a dysfunctional family? Let's just be honest, right? So everybody. So we can just go home now because we're all dysfunctional. No, you're raising your hand but pointing to your wife. Okay, so that's dysfunctional. So you're dysfunctional. Thank you. I don't know if your family was like mine, but my parent, well, actually, before I was even born, my mom took my older sister and ran off to Hawaii. And my dad didn't tell my dad, just left. And after much pleading, she finally came home, so it's no surprise that they divorced when I was 6. And then when I was growing up, I lived with my mom, and we lived next door to my grandmother. We actually lived in low rental housing, but it was on the water in Shalimar Drive. That low rental income housing was on the water. Can you imagine back then? They were like, let's put the poor people down by the water, because we don't want to live that close to the water. And now they realize, wait a minute, what are we doing? Now they tore it down. It's got some nice houses there. So yeah, I grew up swimming in the bayou and stuff. But my grandmother lived next to us, and they went for a period of time where they wouldn't talk to each other because they get mad, they would quit talking. And so then I would have to be the messenger between, my mom says this, well, you go tell your mom, and that's what I would do back and forth between that. They wouldn't call on the phone. They got a phone. No, I'm not talking to her. You go tell her. So I'd have to do that. But then my mom got married when I was, you want to talk about dysfunction, right? My mom sends me away for the weekend to spend the night at a friend's, or for the weekend with a friend in Crestview. And when I came home on Sunday night, she was married and we moved. That's how dysfunctional it was, okay? And so this guy was my stepdad, but when I was in high school, I went and moved in with my father, so I spent 3 years living with my dad. But he basically raised my little sister. And when my mom passed away in 99, we buried her ashes and stuff. But then he just shows up at our house down in Central Florida. So my mom had been passed away about 6 months. He shows up at our house. I'm like, what's he doing here? He never comes over here. He's never been here before. Shows up, has a box. He says, I'm making the rounds between you and your sister. Here's some of your mom's stuff. I never want to hear from you again. Don't ever try to contact me. I was like, wow, that's pretty harsh. I mean, I didn't mind, but my little sister was like a dad to her. And then my sister didn't speak to my father for 5 years. So we've got a little bit of that dysfunction going on in our family. A lot of the grudge holding thing where they don't talk to each other for years. But it's not just my family. Never mind the close relationships in my life that have been severed because I felt like they betrayed me or they felt like I betrayed them. And that's we've been in this series called The Road Back to You. And last week we introduced this wheel and said that there are 5 critical spokes on this wheel. And like a bike wheel, that when the spokes get loose, the integrity of the wheel is compromised and possibly the bicycle as well. And you can end up in an accident. And we said life is that way, is that we have 5 spokes in our life that are critical to a healthy you, a road back to a healthy you. And if just one of these spokes is loose, it can kind of make the integrity of your life damaged, and you could end up in a wreck. So we looked at these spokes. Last week we looked at the spoke with your relationship with God, and if you missed that, I encourage you, shorelinechurch.net. You can watch that again. And so we're going to be talking about your finances. We're going to be talking about your physical health. We're going to be talking about your life at work, the purpose, finding purpose in life. But of all the spokes up there, I think this has the potential, and that's your relationships with other people, has the potential to be the loosest, okay? Because I think everyone in here could tell a story of some relational issue that has derailed your life and you end up in an accident, you end up in crashing. And I hear the stories all the time, okay? And I'm going to tell you some real stories that I've heard, but I've changed the name to protect the innocent, okay? And just so you know, you should realize this. I get a lot of people that want me to do the counseling, and the only reason why they want me to do the counseling is they just, like, Eric knows me. Just because you feel like you know me because you hear me. Like, I call it the Bon Jovi effect, Oh, John Bon Jovi, if I just know that if I can get in touch with him, or maybe you're younger and be Justin Timberlake. Justin would love me, That's how you feel about me, and you think that I need to do your counseling. But just let me tell you that if I do your counseling, your story will be told up here. Oh, I'll change the names, but you'll know it's you, okay? But for instance, a story about Holly and Sarah. Sarah was invited to church by Holly. Started coming to church. She chose to become a Christ follower, gave her heart to the Lord. They become best friends. They become prayer partners. They're together all the time. But then one day, Sarah's job moves her to New York City. I told you this a couple weeks ago, city of 9 million people, but you can still be very lonely. And so she's there, and she ends up falling away from God, ends up alone, feeling abandoned, like nobody cares. And one day she's staring at a bottle of pills, thinking maybe that will help ease her pain. Or the story of two brothers, Michael and Andrew. Michael was 34, Andrew was 32. They grew up together, close in age. They were inseparable. But as life moved on, as they got older, things changed. But then when, at 34 years old, that's when their parents were killed in an automobile accident. And so after the funeral, they started squabbling over their inheritance, and now they don't talk. Or the story of Daniel and Keith. Daniel idolized his father, Keith, but Keith idolized his job. And so there was never enough time for Daniel, and finally one day this emotionally starved child leaves home as a teenager and has never been home since. This next one is actually very close to my heart because it was our best friends, and I've changed the name. Hopefully they're not watching online, but well, they couldn't be watching this, but I did tell it in the one anyway. So I changed her name to Larry and Peggy, and Peggy was starved for her husband's attention. And so much so that she started dressing really sexy to try to get, and this is in a real conversation with her and him, was that I just wanted him to tell me how hot I was. And so she began to dress more and more sexy to get his attention. And he told me that he didn't want to feed that, so he wouldn't give her any attention. He wouldn't compliment her. So she dressed sexier and sexier, and finally when she couldn't get the attention she needed from him, guess where she got it? From somewhere else. And she ended up having an affair. So we all have relationships that could be better, and plus I bet we all have relationships that couldn't get much worse. So whatever the condition of your relationships, God provides a clear pathway, a clear road to help restore your relationships or make your relationships healthy so that you can be on the road to a healthy you, and especially those relationships that are close to you. God wants to reveal his dream for your relationships, especially those that are close to you, because relationships reflect the very heart of God. And I believe that God is crushed when relationships are severed or when relationships perish. And relationships are so important that when God created the earth, think about this. When he created the world, he created everything, Adam and Eve, man and women, the garden, and he looked at it and he said everything was good except for one thing. What was it? It's not good for man to be alone. Yet so many people live without an intentional relational plan. So many people, you could say, look, Eric, I've been married for this many years, or I live in New York City, there's 8 million people. It doesn't matter. You can be in a crowded room or a crowded city and feel alone. You can be married for 40 years and still be nothing more than roommates. You can come to a church like this and say, man, we love people who are far from God, and not even know your next door neighbor's name. But God has a plan for us to experience his fullness through relationships. See, if you want to have a relationship with God, which is important, this is your vertical relationship, but you also have to have a horizontal relationship, and that's with people, and that's where we experience God. So God has prepared people to mentor you, to sharpen you, to love you, and to lead you on the road back to a better you. And not only that, he's also prepared others, or prepared you to mentor other people, to speak into other people's life, to be a blessing to other people, to help them become better people, and to make them more effective. He has relationships that can hold you accountable. There's relationships that we need when we're drifting or we're making bad decisions, that someone can get up in our grill and go, what are you doing? And God has a plan to bless your favorite, your closest relationships, because when that happens, when you have a strong relationship, he gets the credit. Because the way that we have strong relationships is when we allow God to pour his love into our heart and it overflows to other people. Think about this. What was the greatest commandment when they asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? What did he say? He said that you want to sum up the whole Old Testament, all the commandments. He summed it up. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, right? But then he said the second one is just as powerful and just as great. And what was it? To love his people. See, God is a God of relationships, and the road back to you is possible when this spoke is strengthened. So here's what I want to do today. Today, I want to talk about what Scripture has to say about relationships. And I'm just going to let you know it's very practical. So if you want to, you might, last week we had a baptism after church. We baptized 26 people at the beach. And I remember, thank you very much. It was awesome. 2 of the beach attendants that were there watching got baptized. They said, man, we want to give our heart to the Lord. And they did, right there in the water. That was very cool. But there was a couple that's been coming to the church for a little while, and I was sitting there, and they were leaving. I said, so what do y'all got planned for the rest of the day? And they said, well, we're actually going to go over the questions that you gave us last week. We're going to go sit down and have some food and ask those questions. I gave you 2 questions last week. What are the disciplines that help draw you closer to God? And what are the barriers that are keeping you away from God? Told you to discuss that and said, we're going to go discuss that as a couple. I'm like, I love you guys. That's what you're supposed to do. So I've got 4 questions for you today about relationships. And seriously, we said this is the year that we're going to be honest with ourselves, no matter how hard, no matter how bad it makes us feel. So I'd encourage you to take these questions and look at them. And if you want, you don't even have to write them down. They're on the app. When you go to the app, go to Service Notes, and you can download and you can look at all these questions so that you can go over them. So I'm going to give you 4 questions that will help you on the road back to you. And the first question is this, is what relationships in your life need to be initiated? What relationships do you need to initiate? Because we all need relationships for support, for encouragement, and for accountability. So which one is missing for you? Do you have relationships that support you? Do you have people that encourage you? Do you have people that hold you accountable? Here's what Solomon said about why relationships are so important. He said, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. Now, I've read the stats about, anybody lift weights, bodybuilding, that kind of stuff? I've read stats that, like when you have dumbbells and you're doing a bench press, and let's just round it off and say you can lift 100 pounds in dumbbells, okay? That if you can lift dumbbells, which is 1 on each arm, if you can lift 100 pounds, that with a barbell, you can lift like 130. So how come you can lift more? Because it's the power of unity when you combine your arms together to do the same thing. So I looked this up, and I looked up this stat about horses because I'd heard the same thing about horses. And about the 2 draft horses, I'm talking like Clydesdale horses, they don't pull twice as much together. They actually pull 3 times as much. If you take a Clydesdale that can pull 8,000 pounds, that together they can pull 24,000 pounds. So that's what Solomon is talking about. He's collaborating and trying to tell us, look, there's power that comes in a relationship that is not just double. When you have one person that can do this and you combine them in a relationship, it just doesn't double their production. It actually triples their production, okay? He says, so, I love this next verse. He says, 2 are better than 1 because of the good return for their labor. He says, if either of them falls down, one can help the other up. A few years ago, I was in Southern California, and I went to a gym. I know you can tell. And after my 10-minute workout, I decided to go into the jacuzzi. And I went in back there where the sauna and the jacuzzi was, and you'll never guess who was in the jacuzzi. He was in the hot tub. Mr. T. Yeah, he was there. He's got his gold chains, and he's reading the newspaper. And I just imagine that he reads this next. He says, if either of them falls down, one can help the other up. And then he'd go, but I pity the fool who falls and has no one to help him up. You got to admit, that's a pretty good Mr. T imitation, isn't it? I pity the fool who decided he's going to get in the hot tub with me. You ain't getting in here now, okay? So, see, so much of life has to do with solo. It ingrains it in us. As a student, you study alone, right? You take tests by yourself. When you graduate from college, you look for jobs by yourself. Many parents many couples will do their marriage without any help from the outside. They will raise their children without help from the outside. Those children will go on and do the same thing and repeat that cycle. Have a marriage without any help and raise their children without any help. But see, God wants us to do life together, as what Robbie talked about, in a faith community, in a web of interconnected relationships, like a team. But teams don't happen on accident. That's why my wife and I, we intentionally have built into our lives people who speak into our lives. When it comes to finances, we have people that we go to for financial help. We have people that we've always trusted, adults, to invest into our children's life. Because let me tell you, parents, there will be a person that will tell your child the same thing that you've been telling them for years, and they will listen to them before they listen to you. In fact, they'll come to you and go, hey, guess what Pastor Graham told me, or guess what Pastor Quinn told me? And you'll go, I've been telling you that for 5 years. And they'll go, I don't remember, right? So you need those things. I have no doubt in my mind that we are where we are today, Darlene and I, because of the couples that we had model for us a healthy marriage. And it was when we became Christ followers. Because before I was a Christ follower and we lived here before we moved away, I have no doubt in my mind, because the only community that we had in our lives was my surfer friends and my sailor friends and our parents. And between the 2 parents, I think, sets of parents, I think we had 7 divorces, okay, in our family. I have no doubt in my mind that if we would have stayed here, we would not be married. But when we moved away, and and this is the first time I ever got in a church. It was a church like this, and I was there for 17 years. I look back at what those couples that were in that church modeled for us, whether they were intentional or not. Some of them were like old enough to be our parents. Some were just 5 years ahead of us in marriage or 10 years, and we learned things like generosity. We learned how to fight fair. Do you know that you need to fight fair, right? Because you're not against each other, but so many couples, when they get in a fight, they look at each other as the enemy. But if you realize you're on the same team, you're going to fight fairly. We learned fighting fairly. We learned how to communicate better. It took about 7 years into our marriage before that started to get really good. But more than anything, we learned to have fun as a couple. And today, in the season in life we're in now, we intentionally seek out young married couples to invest in. In fact, I've got a life group that has 7 pre-marriage couples that I'm mentoring right now. I'm doing their counseling, and we're hanging out because we look for that. We depend on God's people, and when we depend on God's people, we're actually depending on God, because one of his key tools for working in our lives is through other people. But you have to look for them. You have to look for these relationships. You can't wait for them to come to you. Jesus didn't wait for the 12 disciples to come to him. He intentionally went out and found them. So let me ask you this question. What relationships do you need to initiate? Maybe you need a close relationship for helping you go through those hard times. Maybe you need to get in a small group. Maybe you need some accountability, someone who will get in your face when you're doing some dumb things. Maybe you need to find a date. So get in the youth ministry, because that's where you can. I'm kidding. You don't get in youth ministry to get a date, especially if you're an adult. Yeah, why are you in youth ministry? Because all the girls are so hot, man. They're 17. I know. You know who I'm doing? I'm being all right. From Dazed and Confused. He was like, I'm just hanging around the high school because I get older and the girls just stay the same. No, don't, yeah. But you have to be intentional. You can't wait for them to tell you that they want to take you under your wing. You can't wait for them to come ask you. You've got to ask them. You've got to look for these relationships. You've got to initiate them. James, the brother of Jesus, said, you have not because you didn't ask God. So bring God into the equation. Ask him, say, God, I need to initiate some conversation. I need to initiate some relationships with people who can begin to mentor me. All right, the second question is this. Second question is, what relationships need to be nurtured? What relationships that you're feeling they need a little bit more care? You know, because how do you go from bosom buddies and finishing everybody's sentence to we don't talk anymore? How does a marriage go from, oh my God, all the songs on the radio are about us, to a court hearing? The relationships that are closest to us, the ones that end up needing help, are the ones that we aren't nurturing them on purpose. My wife, Darlene and I, that's how I should say that. My wife, Darlene, and I, don't you think I'm my wife? My wife, Darlene, and I strongly agree that our marriage is only as good as we want it to be. Not as good as I want it to be, and not as good as she wants it to be individually, but how good we want it to be together, corporately. And if we neglect our relationship, let me tell you, it's not pretty. But if we work on it and we're intentional, it's 34 years pretty. That's how long we've been married in July. It's 34 years. Thank you very much. When we guard it and we make each other's needs a priority, listen, that's key right there. If you're married and you're still new, making each other's needs, not your own, each other's needs a priority, I'm telling you, you will not believe the connection and the intimacy and in fact, for me, it is my most fulfilling human relationship that I have on this earth. But I guarantee you, when we get distracted or we get busy, it starts to struggle fast. So you've got to work on it. How do you nurture a relationship? Here's what Paul said. You, my brothers and sisters, now listen, he's talking to Christ followers. When he says brothers and sisters, he's talking to those of you who've received Jesus and put your trust in God. Now, again, you can be here, and we say this all the time. You don't have to believe what we believe to come here, but we do believe that following Jesus will make you better at life anyway if you'll take some of these principles, okay? And but as Christ followers, we have another level of responsibility. So whenever he says that, you, my brothers and sisters, he's talking to Christ followers. He says, even though you're called to be free, do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. But here's how you nurture a relationship. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. In other words, it's about the other person. You serve the other person humbly in love, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. We already brought this up. Love your neighbors yourself. He says, if you don't do that, look, if you bite and devour each other, watch out, because you will be destroyed by each other. See, every relationship ends up somewhere, but few relationships end up somewhere on purpose. And if you let your relationship take its natural default course, okay, it will go where it wants to go, and the natural default setting is you will begin to eat away at each other until the relationship is destroyed. So Paul says you have to choose to serve one another in care. So maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, yeah, my marriage could use some nurturing. Then what do? Do something different, okay? In other words, if you're sitting here and you're feeling like the flame isn't there anymore, don't keep doing what you're doing and expect different results. What's that called? Insanity. Do something different. In fact, do you know, in Revelation, Jesus was talking to a church that had lost its first love, and he said, here's what you need to do. Go back and do the things that you did when you fell in love. If you're married and it's been a long time where the passion has been out, it's not because you fell out of love. I love that. I fell in love. Well, I fell out of love. No, love isn't a feeling, okay? In fact, you can bring those feelings back by just going back and doing what you first did when you fell in love. All those things you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up first. Okay, wait. 1, 2, 3. You didn't hang up, right? Do those things that you used to do. And it sounds crazy, but he says that then you'll bring back that love and feeling. So do some things differently. Maybe commit to some biblical counseling. I'll just be honest with you. Last week I told you honestly what happened I got counseling this week. Doesn't mean I'm crazy. It's good for me. I go get counseling with my wife. Maybe you can let a wiser older couple speak into your life like they did in ours. Maybe you could start praying together. Listen, let me tell you something, guys. Women think it's sexy when their husbands initiate prayer. Am I right, ladies? I mean, doesn't that make you excited when your husband comes, hey, baby, why don't we go pray together? You don't even have to put on, let's get it on. You just go, she's like, oh, yes. Because it makes her feel like you care and you're leading. And so that's a turn on, right? That's why this guy prays for 3 hours. Remember last week I said he prayed for 3 hours. He's like, yeah, they got more. So I talk like this and man, our prayer ministry is going to explode. And our children's ministry as well, you know. But join a small group, a marriage small group, or read a book on communication. You know, and if you need to turn up the heat on your intimacy, think about the things that you did when you first got married. You know, you just can't you don't retire your romance jersey. You're not in the den and go, what's that, Dad? Oh, that's my romance jersey. I used to wear that when I won your mom, but we retired that up about 5 years into marriage. No, man, pull that thing back out and start doing the things that you did before. And let God guide you in nurturing that important relationship. Because otherwise, your marriage may end up somewhere you don't want it to be. Maybe you've got a strained relationship with a son or a daughter. Well, do some things different. You know, do some things that you enjoy together by yourselves, just the two of you. Ask questions. Ask questions to your child. What's going on? Send some, again, when I do these messages, I get convicted. And so I'm sitting here going, okay. And so I text one of my sons, and I was like, I'm so proud of you. And, he texted me back, and we started crying. I could feel his tears coming through the phone, Do something like that. Take one of your children on a vacation, just the two of you. Or ask them if you can pray through their issues. Maybe you've allowed a wall of resentment to build between you and a coworker or a friend or a neighbor or your HOA. What do? Okay, well, one is you got to own your part of the problem. In other words, we get strained relationships, and usually what I find is that there's both are at fault, and the best thing to do is then own your part of the problem. Was it because you didn't see the way they saw, or were you jealous, or was there some gossip? And if you really want to take it a step further as Christ followers, don't just own your part of the problem, own their part of the problem. You go, well, Eric, but they did this, they did that. Here's what I found with relationships. If you want to restore a relationship, you can either be right or you can build a bridge, but you can't do both. Because if you've ever tried to restore a relationship and you go like this, well, let's get together and talk about what happened. You know what happens? You end up back in the same place. Well, you did this and this is how it made me feel. Well, you know how I felt? And then you end up and it's not restored. If you want to be, you can either have a relationship or you can be right. And sometimes if you're a Christ follower, you give up your right to be right when you decide to follow Christ because Jesus gave up his. Because he could have easily pulled us all into a room and said, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're really wrong, you're wrong, I'm right. But what he did was he pulled us into a room and said, I'm right, you're all wrong, but I'm going to give you my right and I'm going to take your wrong. So you can't do that with anybody anymore. So if you really want to take it to another level, take steps in the right direction no matter what. They initiate sincere apologies even when they don't deserve it. Ask God to break down the barriers and see him step in. Maybe if you've got a strained relationship with a family member, ask a friend to hold you accountable that maybe once a week or once a month you send an email or a card or something like that, or you call them. But remember, healing takes time, so it's not going to be an overnight thing. But keep going, seek God. Do what Paul said, seek to serve one another in love. So what relationships need to be nurtured? Here's the third question. What relationships need to be restored? This is a tough, and I'm going to let you just know these questions are getting harder as we go. What relationships need to be restored? Think about the ones that are broken, the ones that are damaged or strained, the ones that are wounded. And in some cases, you're the one that's wounded. In some cases, you're the one that did the wounding. You're the offender. Maybe you offended both of your parents. Maybe your parents did something to you and hurt you. Maybe you're a parent and one of your children made a decision or did something that embarrasses you or hurt you. What do you do? Has someone at work gotten under your skin and and your friendship is strained? Best friend. Here's as a Christ follower, we have, again, another responsibility. Look what he said. Paul says to bear with each other and forgive one another. And if any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. See, we have no right to hold grudges because if anyone could hold a grudge, it'd be Jesus. And he forgave us infinitely. And Jesus also taught that we should initiate the restoration. When we've wronged someone, that we should initiate the registration. We can't wait for them to come to us. He said, therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there at the front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them and then come offer your gift. So we are to offer restoration first. And now I know relationships are hard and it's broken and it hurts. But we have to remember that all things are possible through God, and God is the God of restoration. In fact, the Hebrew word for restoration, I love this, shwab. I think it's a new word we could use. I said it to someone after the second service. Don't be a shwab, because it sounds kind of like, what are you calling me a shwab? But they don't know what it is, and it's a good definition, better than new. So let's just make a new word, and we walk around going, don't be a shwab, dude. Or, hey, you're a real shwab, aren't you? It means shwab, right? Well, everybody's looking around. It was a lot funnier in the second service. It means better than new, made better than new. And isn't that is God's goal with damaged relationships, that he would make them better than new. And when they're damaged and they're severed and there's nobody, you haven't talked to them in a year, you just have to have faith that he's going to do it. And I know it's hard, it's scary. There are people that are afraid to attempt any kind of conversation, and I can relate. Because one of the most important relationships that I ever had in my life has crumbled to the point of believing that it will never be restored. Ever. And this guy was like a son to me. And he feels like I betrayed him, and I felt like I was doing the right thing. But in his mind, I am the worst person that ever lived. To me, he violated some sacred covenants, and I called him on it. But he thinks that I was wrong. And it doesn't matter who's right, but it got embarrassingly ugly to where my best friend ever hates me. And I have attempted to have a conversation with him a couple of times, and I'm met with silence. And you know what it makes me? I don't want to try. I'm telling you, I just don't want to try. But then every now and then I do something like this, and don't think that I can sit here and preach to you and tell you that you need to restore relationships with someone who's been severed and not deal with it myself. So I guarantee you, in the next couple of days, there's going to be something that goes out, and I'm going to try. And I'm going to believe God. And I'm going to believe that one day he's going to respond. Now, I can't guarantee it for you. God told me never mind. I'm going to get out of here, but you're not. No. I can't guarantee it for you. Sorry, I got a little captain in me. I can't guarantee it for you, but it doesn't matter. See, because you're the only person accountable. You are, let me say it this way. You are the only person who answers to God for you. You don't answer to God for that other person, but you answer to God for yourself. And Paul wrote this in Romans. He says, do not repay anyone evil for evil, but be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Look at this. If it is possible, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So as much as it depends on you, you're to live at peace with everyone. So we are to attempt restoration at all times. So think about that relationship that you know that God wants you to restore. Have you done everything within your power to attempt that restoration? Now, it says that Jesus endured the cross because of the pleasure, the joy that was set before him. And that's how we're going to have to go through some pain if you want to have the pleasure of a restored relationship. Now, this next question I wasn't even going to include because I don't want it to be misconstrued, okay? But I decided to include it anyway, and it is, what relationships need to be severed? What relationships need to be severed or at least redefined? Now, let me just say something. Let me just say what I'm not saying, okay, when I say this. Let me make it very clear. I'm not talking about getting a divorce on unbiblical grounds because you're unhappy, because you can do things to change that happiness. I'm not talking about severing a relationship that is challenging to you, but you know God wants it in your life because they're holding you accountable, or they're mentoring you, or they've got you like a really good coach who's hard on you, and you want to end the relationship because it's uncomfortable. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about wrong, destructive, and unhealthy relationships that need to be severed or at least redefined. Paul warned us this. He said, do not be misled. Bad company, he's not talking about the band from the 70s. Bad company, although it probably does corrupt good character. Bad company corrupts good character. When I was a youth pastor, I used to say this all the time. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future, okay? And in fact, if you're a single adult here and you're trying to figure out if that guy is marriage material, all you need to do is look at his friends. Are his friends, is he keeping good company? Are they a positive influence? Do they have character and integrity? Are they going somewhere? Then you can probably expect a great person to marry. But if his friends are heading in the wrong direction, because listen, friends taking you in the wrong direction, friends taking you in the wrong way can destroy your life. Like this video.
Joker wants to race.
Race? That's ridiculous.
All right, come on. Let's go. Let's go.
Put your window down!
He wants something.
He's probably drunk.
You're going the wrong way! What? You're going the wrong way!
He says we're going the wrong way.
Oh, he's drunk. How would he know where we're going?
Yeah, how would he know? Thank you. Thanks a lot. Terrific.
Thank you. What a moron.
You're going in the wrong direction! You're going to kill somebody! You're going the wrong way!
What? Why?
I just love slapstick comedy. I love that stuff. So I laugh at this movie every time it comes on around Thanksgiving, and my wife just laughs at me because I love this kind of stuff. But I think I've had friends like that take you down the wrong way, and then you look over them and you're like, you're the devil, okay? In the same letter that Paul wrote about bad company, he says, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Not at all meaning the people of this world who are immoral, or the greedy and swindlers, or idolaters. In that case, you would have to leave behind this world. See, when apparently there was a first letter that Paul wrote, and he told them not to hang around these type of people, but then he gets word that they're not hanging around people that aren't Christians. In other words, that they're refusing to have anything to do with people on the outside. So he writes a second letter, and in this second letter, there's a man who's sleeping with his stepmom, and they're all excited about it. The church doesn't do anything about it. And he goes, listen, when I told you that, I wasn't talking about non-Christians, because if that was the case, you wouldn't be able to go to work. You wouldn't be able to go, you wouldn't have any influence with the outsiders. He says, I want you to hang around people who aren't Christians because I want you to have influence on them. I don't want them to have influence on you. So I wasn't talking about non-Christians who, by the way, have not bought into your value system, your way of believing. He says, I was talking about Christians. Because he says, but now I'm writing to you that you must not associate with anyone who claims to be a what? A brother or sister. Well, who's that, we said? That's a Christ follower, right? But is sexually immoral or greedy, an idolater, a slanderer, a drunkard, or swindler. Do not even eat with such people. I remember when I first became a Christian and I was driving a Coca-Cola truck, and the beer dude, the guy who delivered beer, he was a big party guy and he wanted to go to lunch. And I was like, I can't eat with you. And because I took the scripture wrong, and I remember I had somebody mentor me, he goes, no, he's not talking about that. He's talking to people outside the church. See, contrary to popular belief, we are to judge those inside the church. In other words, we're to judge one another. Paul says we have no business judging people outside the church, which for the most part, the church has done a pretty good job. They like to judge people outside the church, but Paul says you can't judge them. They haven't bought into your belief system, their way of believing. So we have no business judging those outside the church. What the church is not very good at, or I should say we as Christ followers, is we're not very good at receiving. That when I start to drift away, and one of my buddies comes and challenges me and goes, hey man, what are you doing? You know what we do? Who are you to judge? The Bible says not to judge. Who are you to judge? And Paul says, us. If we've bought into Jesus' way of believing, Jesus' values, then we need to hold each other accountable. And that's what we're here for with each other. That's what relationships are for, to go, come on, Mel, don't be doing that. That's not godly. And that's what we're to do. It's not judging. And he says, especially if there's a relationship that you have with someone who's a Christ follower that's kind of bringing you down, you need to be watching out. So if you're in a relationship that's hurting your relationship with God, you either need to redefine it, because when I say sever, I'm never into severing relationships. If there's a relationship that's a barrier between me and God, I'm more for distancing that relationship. In other words, I still want to keep a bridge. I still want to have a relationship with someone so that maybe I could win them back to God, or I can help point them in the right direction. So I'm never really for severing a relationship, but I'm more for redefining a relationship. And that's where this is. If you've got a relationship that's hurting your relationship with God, by all means, if you can be an influence, great. But if you can't, maybe you need to distance it. So what that means is sometimes there's a relationship. Maybe you have a business partner that's ripping you off or is dishonest. Maybe you need to redefine that relationship. Maybe guys, maybe you got someone who drags you down spiritually. Maybe you redefine that relationship. You got a golf foursome that's always ragging on their wives, and now it's affecting your relationship. You need to redefine that relationship with them. Or you got people that gossip and talk about your other friends, and it's affecting your friendship. Then you need to redefine that relationship. Okay. You got to watch out for people who are a temptation to you. Guys, if you're dating someone who's not the person for you, why are you wasting your time? In other words, if you don't have any plans in marrying them, I think you should just redefine the relationship. For one, you're taking yourself off the market dating someone else and them. I know I've gone to meddling now, right? So let me kind of sum this up, and we're going to pray, all right? Let me ask you this. Is there a relationship that needs to be initiated? Maybe you're brand new, married, and it's a lot harder than you thought it was going to be. Maybe you need to find a couple to help you. Maybe you just got into a job that as you're into it, you feel like you're over your head because they're expecting results and you're new to this. Maybe you even sold your capabilities. Maybe you need someone that can mentor you. So is there a relationship that needs to be initiated? What relationships need to be nurtured? Remember we said we're going to be honest with ourselves no matter how bad it makes us feel? Does your marriage lost that love and feeling? So what do you need to do to bring it back? Then let me ask the third question. Who came to mind when it came to reconciling a relationship? And I say that because in a room like this, there's a good chance that most of us have a relationship that has been severed, maybe with a family member or a close friend, and it's in the back of our mind that we need to do something about it. What relationship needs to be redefined or severed? What is there a relationship that you always get in trouble when you're with this person, but you always justify it? Is there a relationship that's become a barrier between you and God? I encourage you to take these questions home and look at these questions because, again, we're looking at one spoke on our wheel. Those 5 spokes are important in our road back to a better us, a healthy us. And next week, we're going to be looking at our life, at work. In other words, what has God called us to do? What is our purpose in life? And I want to leave you with this question. If God put everyone on earth for a reason, then why are so many people trudging through their work day or their week or their year or even the whole lifetime waiting for it to end? Waiting for it to end. When really God has given you purpose that can be fulfilling. And maybe you're stuck in a job that isn't doing that. Well, that's one of the important spokes, and we're going to talk about that next week. Father, we thank you so much for, first of all, how important relationships are to you. That the most important driving relationship was the relationship that you had with us, that you were willing to sacrifice your son in order to restore a relationship with the world. So we see how important that is, and we know people are important to you. And whoever it is, God, that we have a severed relationship with, that we're on the outs, that we're not speaking, that's someone you love, and that's someone you died for. And maybe you're speaking to us and encouraging us to reconcile that relationship. God, maybe there's relationships that we need to initiate so that we can continue on this road to a healthy you. Maybe there's relationships that need to be nurtured. And Lord, I pray for those relationships that maybe we need to redefine because we want to be a positive influence, but we don't want anything to come in the way of our relationship with you. Father, we thank you. I thank you for speaking to everybody in this room as they lay these questions out before you. And we've chosen, Lord, this year to be honest with ourselves, no matter how bad it makes us feel. So we love you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.